Hello, everyone. So this is the lecture on section 3.3, which we're still working with decimals. And in this section, we're going to talk about multiplying decimals and remind you how to multiply decimals together. So let me write down the rules for multiplying decimals, and then we'll work on some examples. So to multiply decimal values. So first thing you want to do, multiply the factors, right, the numbers, as if they were whole numbers. So multiply the factors as if they were whole numbers. So you kind of have to ignore the decimal point when that's the first step to multiplying two decimal numbers together. Just ignore the decimal point, multiply them as if they were whole numbers. Okay, then step 2, you want to find the total number of decimal places in the factors. So find the total number of decimal places in the factors. And then finally, count that many places from the right end of the product, right? Remember, the answer to a multiplication problem is called the product. So count that many places from the right end of the product and insert a decimal point. Okay, so again, I'll give you a second to write these down. So step 1, multiply the factors as if they were whole numbers. Then step 2, you want to find the total number of decimal places in all the factors. And then you want to count that many places from the right end of the answer, of the product, and insert a decimal point. Okay, so let's do some examples that illustrate this. Let's say I want to multiply 97.26 times 5.3. Okay, so I'm multiplying these together. Right, you definitely don't have to line up decimal points when you're multiplying. You can just line up the rightmost digit. You can line those up on the right side. Okay, so ignore the decimal point. Think of this as 9,726 times 53. Ignore the decimal point to start. So we would multiply like we normally would with whole numbers, right? 3 times 6 is 18, so I write down 8, carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 3 times 7 is 21, I write down the 1, carry the 2. 3 times 9 is 27, plus 2 is 29. Then I put a 0 here, right? Now I work with the 5. 5 times 6 is 30, so I write down the 0. Carry the 3, I'll write the 3 here. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 3 is 13. So 3, carry the 1. 5 times 7 is 35, plus 1 is 36. 6, carry the 3. 5 times 9 is 45, plus 3 is 48. Then I add, right? So 8 plus 0 is 8. 7 plus 0 is 8. 1 plus 3 is 4. 9 plus 6 is 15, so 5, carry the 1. 1 plus 2 plus 8 is 11, so I write down the 1, carry the 1, and then 1 plus 4 is 5. Okay, so again, I'm just treating them like whole numbers to start. Those two factors are just whole numbers. Now, Step 2, I have to figure out how many decimal places there are in the factors, the total number of decimal places. So if you look in the first number, right, I have 1, 2, right, 2 decimal places. In the second number, I have 1 decimal place. So the total, the sum of those is 3, right? There's a total of 3 decimal places in all the factors. So what I have to do for my answer is I start on the right-hand side, and I go over 3 places, and that's where I insert the decimal point. So I want a decimal point right there. So the product of those two is going to be 515.478. Okay, here's another example. Let's say I have, let's say 12 times 3.5 times 0.2. Okay, and again, remember, if they're in parentheses right next to one another, that implies multiplication. So we could do this left to right. So let's just do it left to right. Let me multiply the 12 times 3.5 first. So I'm treating them as if they're whole numbers, right? So 5 times 2 is 10. 0, carry the 1. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 1 is 6. And I put a 0 here. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 1 is 3. So this is 0. 12, so 2 carry the 1, and 1 plus 3 is 4. And in this case, the total number of decimal places is simply 1, right? This is the whole number. There's no decimal places. This has 1 decimal place. So for my answer, I have to move this over so it has 1 decimal place. So that would be 42.0. Okay, so now I have, like, this problem now becomes 42.0 times 0.2. Right? I already multiplied the first two factors together to give me 42.0. So now I can finish this up. Well, what's 42.0 times 0.2? Well, let's multiply it. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. And now the 0 is not going to do anything, right? 0 times 0 is 0, so I don't need to do anything else. But I need to count the total number of decimal places, which is 1, and another one, so 2. So in the answer, I have to move this over 2. So it looks like it's going to be 8.4. Okay, so the answer is going to be, really it's here, right? 8.4 is the answer. All right, so really that's all you need to do. You need to multiply the numbers as if they're whole numbers, count the total number of decimal places in the factors, and then start at the right-hand side of the answer of the product and move left that many decimal places. All right, what about like special cases? What if we multiply by powers of 10? What happens? Let's look at that. So let's say I multiply let's say numbers, like 10, 100, 1,000. Or if I go the other way, it could be, 0.1, which is 1/10, or 0.01, 1/100th, or 0.001, 1,000th, etc. So these are called powers of 10. Right? These are all powers of 10. It turns out it's going to make my life easy. It's going to be a matter, ultimately it's going to be equivalent to moving the decimal point either to the right or to the left, depending on whether the number is greater than, like if it's a power of 10 greater than 1, like 10, 100, 1,000, or less than 1, like 1/10, 100th, 1,000, and so on. So let me show you what I mean by that. Let's say I want to multiply 3.892 times 100. Okay, so I'm going to line this up and do it like I normally would. And then we'll figure out a much easier way of doing this. So I have 0 times 2, right, is 0. 0 times 9, 0. 0 times 8, 0. 0 times 3 is 0. And I put a 0 here. Now I do the second 0. 0 times 2 is 0. Times 9 is 0. Times 8 is 0. Times 3 is 0. Put 2 zeros. Now 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 9 is 9, 1 times 8 is 8, 1 times 3 is 3. So if I look at the total number of decimal places in my factors, I have just 3, right? This is the whole number, but this has 3 decimal places, so I need to move this over 3 decimal places in the answer. So it's going to go here. But compare this, right? Compare this number. Let me do it this way. Add these together. And then it goes here, right? Compare that number to the original number. And what do you notice? Isn't this equivalent to taking the original number and moving a decimal point 2 places to the right? Right? So multiplying by 100 is equivalent to moving that decimal point 2 places to the right. So I'll say multiplying by 100 is the same as moving the decimal point two places, right, to the right. How do you know it's to the right? Because it's going to be a much larger number. I'm multiplying by 100, so it's much larger, so I have to move the decimal point to the right. Okay, here's another example. Let's say I want to multiply 97.1423 times 1,000. Okay, so if we write this all out, first of all, I'm going to get all zeros, right? I'm going to get zeros. Then I put a 0 there. I still get 6 zeros. I put 2 zeros. I still get all these zeros. Then finally 3 zeros, right? And now the 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times 9 is 9. If I add these all up, of course I'm just going to get that last number, right, because everything else is zeros. And now if you look at the original problem, I have 4 decimal places, right? There's no decimal places in that factor of the 1,000, it's the whole number. But this one has 4 decimal places. So I have to move this 4 places to the left here. So that's going to go right here. But notice this is equivalent to doing what with the original problem? Well, it's taking that original decimal point and moving it 3 places to the right, right? So if I multiply by 1,000, I move the decimal point 3 places to the right. So what are we doing in general? In general, we're moving the decimal point the same number of places to the right that the power has zeros. Since you're multiplying by 1,000 and it has 3 zeros, that's the number of decimal places I move to the right. Okay, so let me write that out. So I'll say, in this case, move decimal point 3 places to the right. Okay, so in general, if you're multiplying by a power of 10, power of 10, that's greater than 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, so on, then you're going to move the same number of places that the power has zeros. So in general, move the decimal point to the right the same number of places the power has zeros. Okay, so in general, move the decimal point to the right the same number of places the power has zeros. Okay, so it's just a quick way, right? So now if I give you something like, let's say 3.714 times 10. Then immediately, I'm multiplying by 10, it has 1 0. So I know that this is equivalent to moving that decimal point one place to the right. So this has got to equal 37.14. Right? It's just a quick way of multiplying by powers of 10. Now, what if the power of 10 is less than 1? Okay? So what if it's like 0.1, 0.01, 0.001, and so on? So first of all, we know that 0.1, right, is like multiplying by 1/10. 0.01 is like multiplying by 1 over 100, right? Because it's equal to 100th. And then 0.001 is equal to 1,000th, and so on. So what's going to happen? It turns out it's the same as moving a decimal point to the left, right? So here's an example. Let's say I want to multiply 82.124 times, let's say 0.1. Okay, so again, if you forget these rules, you can always just do it out and you will get exactly the same answer, but let's do it here. So in 0.1. Okay, so 1 times 4 is 4, 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 8 is 8. And then the 0, I don't even need to write the 0, right? If you want, you could. I could 0, and then I have 5 zeros, right? So this is going to be, now I add them, so 4, 2, 1, 8, 2, 8. Now, if you look at the total number of decimal places in my factors, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have to move this 4 places to the left in the answer, right, in the product. So that's going to go there. But compare that answer to the original number. It's the same exact number, except all I did was move that decimal 1 place to the left. Okay, so in this problem, multiplying by 0.1, which is 1/10, is the same as moving the decimal point 1 place to the left. Okay, and then you can kind of guess, right, what's going to happen in general. Let's do another problem here. Let's say I have, I don't know, let's say I have 5197.21, and I want to multiply that by 0.001, right, which basically has 3 decimal places, right? This is 1 over 1,000. So if I do this out, so I have 1 times 1, 1 times 2, 1 times 7, 1 times 9, 1 times 1, 1 times 5. Everything else is going to be zeros now, right? So really that's going to be my answer, but I have to get the correct location of decimal point. So I look at my factors, I have 2 decimal places, and then here I have 3 decimal places, so I need 5, right, in my answer, my product. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I start at the right, move it over 5 places. So that's going to go right here. So this is the answer, and again, how does that compare to the original number? It's the same as the original number, except I move the decimal point 3 places to the left. So if I multiply by 0.001, which is 1 over 1,000, it's equivalent to moving it 3 places to the left. If I multiply by 1,000, it's equivalent to moving 3 places to the right, right? So in this case, I'm moving the decimal point, I'll say same as moving the decimal point 3 places to the left. So in general, right, if you multiply by a factor of 10 that's less than 1, then you're going to move that many decimal places. So this is a factor of 10 that's less than 1, 0.001. It has 3 decimal places. You're going to move that many places to the left. Okay, so that's like the general rule. All right, so let's do a few more examples, and then that'll be it for this section. Okay, so let's say I have this problem I want to solve. I have 4 minus 2.1 parentheses 3.5 minus 1.8. Okay, and remember, when a 2.1 is next to the parentheses, that implies multiplication. You can write even a dot in there if you want. So first of all, we have to think of order of operations, right? I have subtraction, multiplication, I have parentheses, and subtraction with inside. Well, we know we need to do whatever inside the parentheses first. So there's only one operation here. I just need to do that subtraction. So I'll do that on the side here. I have 3.5. Let me do it over here. I have 3.5 minus 1.8. So I'm going to line up the decimal points. I need to borrow, right? So this is going to be 15 minus 8, which is 7, and then 2 minus 1, which is 1. So now this is really the same as 4 minus 2.1 times, I'll put a parenthesis here, times 1.7. Sometimes you don't want to get the multiplication dot mixed up with the decimal point, right? So you have to be a little careful with that. So now I have subtraction, I have multiplication. What's done next? Well, multiplication is done next, right? So I need to do the multiplication next. So I have 2.1 times 1.7. 7 times 1 is 7. 7 times 2 is 14. Put a 0 here. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 2 is 2, right? I'm treating them just like whole numbers. So this is 7, 5, 3. And now I have to count the total number of decimal places in the factors, which is 2. So my answer, I have to have 2 decimal places, right? So go start at the right and move over 2. So that's going to be 3.57. So now this becomes 4 minus 3.57. So now all I have left is that subtraction. Again, I'll do it here. So I want to line up decimal points, right? So really the 4 I have to rewrite as 4.00. And now subtract. Well, I'm going to have to borrow, right? So this becomes 3. That becomes 10. But then I have to borrow again. That becomes 9. And that becomes 10. So 10 minus 7 is 3. 9 minus 5 is 4. Decimal point is there. And then 3 minus 3 is 0. So it looks like this is just going to be 0.43. Okay, you don't have to write that 0 in front, but it's nice to write it in the ones place. It just keeps it cleaner. So 0.43 would be the answer. Okay, in this problem, it says, a plumber is paid $37.50 per hour for the first 40 hours worked. She gets time and a half, which comes out to be $56.25, for any time over her 40 hours. If she works 49 hours in a particular week, how much is her pay for that week? Okay, so $37.50, right, per hour for the first 40 hours, right? So we know to figure out our pay, at least for the first 40 hours, we're going to have to multiply 37.50. You can think of it this way, dollars, right, per hour times 40 hours. I'll just abbreviate hours as HRS. Plus And then she gets time and a half, right, which is 56.25. So her rate is 56.25 per hour times the number of hours over 40, right? And if she works 49, then the number of hours over 40 must be 49 minus 40, right? Which is really 9, but I'll write it out in detail first. So it's 49 minus 40. I want the number of hours beyond 40, right? That's more than 40. So really, this is going to simplify to 3750 times 40 plus 5625 times 9. Okay, so we need to work this out. So order of operations still apply here, right? And I need to do the multiplications first, then I can add the resulting sums. So let's do this on the side here. Let's say I have 3750 times 40. So let's see, these are all going to be 0, right? Then I put a 0 here. 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 5 is 20, so 0 carry the 2. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 2 is 30, so 0 carry the 3. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15. And then I have 2 decimal places, right, in my factors, so the answer has to have 2 decimal places. It looks like this is going to be $1,500. And in the second piece, this is going to be 5625 times 9. Okay, so 9 times 5 is 45, so 5 carry the 4. 9 times 2 is 18, plus 4 is what, 22? Carry the 2. 9 times 6 is 54, plus 2 is 56. Carry the 5. And then 9 times 5 is 45, plus 5 is 50, right? So this is going to be 50. And then I need to move, I guess I need 2 decimal places again, right? So this is plus 506.25. So now I just need to add those together, right? So I have 1,500 plus 506.25. Remember, line up the decimal points when you're adding. So this is what? 5, 2, 6, 0, 10. So carry the 1 and then 2. So it looks like her pay for that week will be $2,006.25. Okay. Okay, and then we'll do a couple of Myoba math questions for this section. So this question says Joe's employer will reimburse him $0.17, 17 cents, right, per mile driven if Joe drives 208.11 miles on a business trip. What is his mileage reimbursement? Okay, so again, this is really a multiplication problem, right? Because I have Joe gets $0.17 per mile, and I want to multiply by the total number of miles driven, which is 208.11. Miles will cancel, and I'll get my answer in dollars. So I'll know how many dollars that he gets reimbursed, right? Get my answer in dollars. So really, I'm just multiplying these together. I usually always write the larger number first, and then the smaller number. You don't have to do that, but it's much cleaner to do it that way. Okay, so 7 times 1 is 7, right? 7 times 1 is 7. 7 times 8 is, what's that, 56? So 6, carry the 5. 7 times 0 is 0 plus 5 is 5. 7 times 2 is 14. Put a 0 here. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 2 is 2. Now I add these, so 7 plus 0 is 7. 7 plus 1 is 8. 6 plus 1 is 7. 5 plus 8 is about 13, so 3 carry the 1. 1 plus 4 plus 0 is 5. 1 plus 2 is 3. And then I have a total of, 4 decimal places, like 2 in each factor, so I need to move this over 4. So that should be 35.3787. And then probably because we probably want to round this to the nearest cent, right, which is 1/100th of a dollar. So really I want to round to the hundredths place here. So I look to the right, I have an 8, so that's going to go up by 1. So the best answer rounded would be $35.38. So that's what he would get reimbursed. Okay, and then here's one last problem to work on. Question 8. We just want to simplify this expression, right? We want to expand it out, but we have to be careful, right? We must use order of operations. So in this case, I have multiplication. Remember when the 3.2 is next to parentheses, multiplication. I have addition, I have parentheses, I have exponents. So really, I need to do what's inside the parentheses first, right? So let's do that first. I'll do it right here. So let's say we have 5.9 plus 5.8. Okay, so I line up decimal points. This is what, 17, so carry the 1, and then 11. So now this problem becomes 3.2 times 11.7 squared. Okay, now what? Well, I have exponents, I have multiplication. Right? If you want, you could even remove the parentheses now. I could write this as 3.2. This dot in the middle here means multiplication, and it's 11.7 squared. So order of operations tells us that exponents now has to be done before multiplication, right? So we need to do, I'll do on the side here, 11.7 squared. So that's going to be 11.7 times 11.7. Right, multiply it by itself. So 7 times 7 is 49. So carry the 4. 7 times 1 is 7 plus 4 is 11. Carry the 1. 7 times 1 is 7 plus 1 is 8. 0. 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Then 2 zeros. 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Add these up. This is what? 9. 8. 8 plus 1 plus 7 is what? 16. Carry the 1. And then 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. And then a 1 here. And then looks like it's going to be 2 decimal places. So it looks like 136.89. Okay. Then what I have left now is going to be 3.2 times that. It probably is cleaner just to use parentheses here, so I don't get my multiplication symbol messed up with the decimal point. Okay, so that's the last step, right? I want to multiply those two together. So 136.89 times 3.2. I always write the larger number first. Okay, 2 times, and by larger I mean has the most digits, right? 2 times, it doesn't really matter where the decimal point goes. 2 times 9 is 18, so 8 carry the 1. 2 times 8 is 16 plus 1, so 17, 7 carry the 1. 2 times 6 is 12 plus 1 is 13, so 3 carry the 1. 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7, and then 2 times 1 is 2. Put a 0 here. 3 times 9 is 27, right? So 7 carry the 2. 3 times 8 is 24, plus 2 is 26. 6, carry the 2. 3 times 6 is 18, plus 2 is 20. 0, carry the 2. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 is 11. 1, carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. As long as I didn't make any mistakes here. This is 8. 7 plus 7 is 14, so carry the 1. 6 plus 3 plus 1 is 10, so 0, carry the 1. 1 plus 7 plus 0 is 8. 2 plus 1 is 3, and then 4. And then in this case, I need, 3, right? Decimal places. I have 2 here and 1 here, so I need 3. Bring this over 3. So that should be the answer. And a problem like this, you can check it with your calculator. You want to make sure you can do it by hand, but you can always check it with your calculator to make sure that you didn't make any little mistakes here or there. So this should be 438.048. That's correct. Great. So that's it for this section. Next section, we will look at dividing decimals, and that will wrap up the module on decimals. Thanks.